Hello and welcome to a new interview from MinnMax. I'm Ben Hansen, and our guest today is Andy McNamara, who is the former editor-in-chief of Game Informer. Last week, he announced that he's going to be leaving Game Informer after 29 years, which is a mind-boggling run. Dare I say, a legendary run, as much as Andy would hate to hear that. If you're not familiar with our history, I was the video producer for Game Informer for 9 years, so I know Andy pretty well at this point. So he's about to go off on his next journey out to LA to start a new job, and so it's an interesting era in Andy's life to talk about lessons he's learned along the way, his skills for moving into the future, a lot of talk about biking, but it's all good stuff, so we hope you enjoy this discussion. Thanks to everybody that tweeted when Andy announced that he was leaving, like, oh, of course he's going to do one of those MinnMax exit interviews, because I guess we talked to Kyle Bossman and Dan Reichert and Mike Mahardy. I don't know if it's our defining thing, but it's cool to have Andy, and we appreciate his time for jumping on the line to talk about his career with us. If you don't want to watch this on YouTube and instead you want to unlock the podcast version, you can support us at the $5 tier on Patreon and get access to the podcast version of this, as well as the deepest dives on Last of Us Part 2, Final Fantasy VII Remake, Animal Crossing, Chrono Trigger. It's our huge community game club discussion, so you can unlock the podcast version of those, early access to the MinnMax show, a lot of other fun stuff there. But without further ado, here's Andy McNamara. Andy McNamara, welcome to MinnMax, sir.
Hey, how you doing?
Pretty well. How are you doing?
It's like weird. I don't have a job today. It's like the first day I don't have a job kind of thing. It's weird. Like last night going to bed, I was like, nope, I don't have to get up tomorrow morning. I don't have to do anything. And that's been a long time since I didn't have to like get up for work kind of thing.
But it has to be so bizarre ending this run at Game Informer after 29 years during the pandemic, because it's like, it'd be cleaner and nicer to have that cutoff of like, okay, going to the office every day and now not. But now it's like, well, I don't have a job, so I guess I'll go downstairs and play Monster Train, which I probably would be doing if I was still on the clock for Game Informer here.
Yeah, I mean, I spent the day, I still want to play games all day, and last Friday was actually, I had the day off and I worked on stuff for the new gig and just trying to get things ready. So it's just been busy, and I'm not really one who likes to sit around and do nothing. I think a lot of people gave me kind of grief. They were like, Andy, how long until you start your new job? I'm like, not long. They're like, that's not long enough. And I'm like, I know, but I want to get started and get going and start doing stuff again. And I'm excited. So here we are.
When are you starting this new job? And can you give us any hints as to what this thing is?
I don't know. I can really give you any hints. Hopefully it's just like one of my first things there was like, hey, how do you want to handle this?
Right.
I think was kind of the first questions. What do you want me to do? And so basically right now it's like I start next Monday. So I have 1 week. So I start in 1 week. But it's like you said, it's during the whole COVID thing. So my first day at that new job is the same day as my last day at my old job, which is right here in the basement. Working from home. Yeah. So, that's kind of the interesting thing. And like you said, it's been a real bummer about COVID too, just because, I miss everybody, right? Obviously, the Game Informer crew means a lot to me. Not being able to see them, daily other than in video form. It sounds funny, but truly we caught up on the podcast. That's when hey, these are the people I work with. Hey, what's going on?
It's so weird not to have there's not going to be a big going away party at a bar, anything like that. It's going to be so bizarre just to have you suddenly disappear and go out to California.
It's totally weird to be sneaking out in the middle of the night. I mean, we're getting close to getting done, done with the home and get and hopefully move to LA sometime in the next 2 to 3 months. Which, LA has COVID totally under control. So that's just totally peachy. Mm-hmm. And so that's all a little weird. And it's definitely we're not having a party. I think that's a bummer. I think I plan on coming back. I'm going to fly back to Minnesota and throw, some kind of party in some way, shape, or form, or make my friends do it, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I have all my normal friends, all my friends and family that are here in town. We just, hey, everybody. We'll see you when we come back. It's so weird. COVID has definitely made this odd.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I don't want to walk you through the full Game Informer history because I'm sure you're doing that a bunch in this era, and we already did it on the Game Informer show a couple years ago. You can search, it was for the 25th anniversary. So if you search Game Informer History Podcast, I'm sure you can find that. It's a good resource. But I do want to take you back to when you announced things last week, announced that you were leaving. You tweeted that it was very hard to send that tweet. I'm curious about what you thought about the reaction to your announcement. Did you have any gut reaction from just the amount of feedback you got? I mean, like Neil Druckmann, Randy Pitchford, like everybody was weighing in, and it must have felt shocking to see.
Yeah, it really was. I mean, it was very humbling. It's like anything. For anyone who's made content, by the way, I want to point this out. Sometimes you do things and you're like, I know how people are going to react, and they just ignore it, right? Mm-hmm. And sometimes you're like, oh, like no one's going to care about this, and everyone loves it, right? And it's really hard to assess your own value, right? I think it's a really hard thing to do, like to be like, oh, I'm like, oh yeah, I've been doing this 29 years. Everyone else kind of was very quick to point out that's a long ass time. I think Chris Charla tweeted like, that's 66% of the video game industry that Andy had covered it. And I was like, well, you put it that way, Charla, that's a little crazy when you think about it that way. But no, I was not prepared. I mean, I didn't expect like Phil at Xbox, Shu at Sony. Yeah. So I got so many DMs from readers. I got, oh my God. I mean, I spent literally the next 24 hours just saying thanks to people, and I'm still not done. And honestly, I feel like I've waited too long now. I probably could spend a whole one of these days off I have this week writing thank you notes to everyone who sent things in. I got letters from people that were like old readers that I remember, interacting with in the past, and they're saying nice things. It was just kind of unbelievable.
That's so nice.
Game Informer was trending in the US. It was like insane. It was awe-inspiring I can't thank everybody enough, right? For that kind of reaction. I did not expect it. And so it was very, I mean, it's odd to say, it wasn't that it was fun. It just brought me a lot of joy. Yeah. Seeing that reaction.
It's a little bit like, take this in the spirit which is intended. It's like you get to see your own funeral. It feels a little bit bizarre, right? Just to have everybody at the same time cry out and say, hey, we really appreciate this guy. Yeah, it really was. And that was so awesome. Yeah. It really was. And, I think that's a tribute to like, hopefully, I feel like that's tribute to like the things that mattered to me, right? Which I think that's also something that's important too. Like I care about being, honest with the consumer and like getting good games and like, trying to, when possible, help people be successful, and like, I think that was all like kind of just like, I think I was an agent for change for games for all these years. And so it felt good. Yeah. Yeah. Was there one tweet that meant the most to you? Or one style of tweet? Was it like the old timers or the people who were specific and remembering a specific issue? Or was there one that hit you harder than you expected? No, I mean, it was great because I saw so many people that appreciated different things. They're like, oh, that was my first issue. This was the thing, like this is what I liked about Game Informer. This is what I liked about what you did. A lot of people told me, I loved reading your letter every month. And I was like, God, writing that thing every month was a disaster piece. I can't believe that, right? Like thank you all so much. And I think that all mattered. I think the stuff that really just like that I think affected maybe me the most was just that people were, it's just not my style. You know this, Ben. It was weird to be called a legend, which happened a lot. And like I kind of hate repeating it a little bit, but it's like you don't like you read it and you're like, well, that one person's crazy, and then you like read it hundreds more times, and it starts to become very much like, wow, I don't know if I'm that responsible for such a thing. So that was interesting. Yeah, I think that was interesting, and like I appreciate that many people took part in what I made for so long, right? And like. It was very hard for me to make this call because I worked on everything at Game Informer. At some point, I touched pretty much all of it, right? I didn't do the content day to day, but I mean like the logo, the like bug, all the websites, all the magazine designs, all the people.
all the stuff. I mean, like at some point or another, I had, for good or ill, by the way. I'm sure there's things I screwed up, by the way. But I mean, I had been involved with everything, and it's so weird to just like one day be like, here's a tweet, not doing that anymore. Bye.
Is it liberating? I know it's sad. Is it kind of feel positive in a way for you just to be like, oh, it says something good about humanity and maybe, personal self-worth? Or like, oh, I'm more than just Game Informer. I can cut that off and leave it behind and grow a little bit.
I mean, I hope I'm more than just Game Informer. We're about to find out. And we're about to find out.
Jury's out.
Because I mean, I'm going out in that great big world out there and trying to do something new, and just try to see what I can do in some different things as I try to learn more about games, right? And so it's going to be interesting. I went down a lot of paths of trying to figure out what I wanted to do, talk to a lot of people, and it was kind of hard to think it through. It was hard to just not be like, that's the other thing that was hard about this talk was that I was like, I'm done with games media, which was like, that's a hard thing to kind of come to because, you could argue, I'm sure there's someone out there that thinks I'm an idiot, but I'm an expert at video game media, right? You know what I mean? I've done, I feel like I can say that, done it for so long, seen a lot of stuff, right? And then to go out and do something new, I want to apply that expertise, but I'm now going to be doing something that like I don't have 29 years experience with, right?
Yeah.
And so that's pretty scary.
So how did you go about assessing your self-worth, to figuring out what you're good at? Did you just start writing down, these are my skills? Or is it just a matter of reaching out to, I mean, you have connections throughout the entire industry at this point, just reaching out to people to see like, would you want somebody like me to join you? I don't know.
There's some of that.
Okay.
Yeah, there's a little bit of that. There's a little, I'm weird in the way I do things. I certainly took notes. I wrote down a lot of things about what I thought, I could do, or things that I had done, or things that I was good at. I did my own kind of what I'm good at, what I'm bad at kind of things. And I tried to be honest with people when I was looking, talking to people like what I am good at and what I am bad at and what I could learn, what I'd like to learn. So that's all there.
And so what are you good at? I've been meaning to ask you.
Ben, I don't like to sound like I don't like to publicly sound too egotistical. So I get a little wary, I guess, of saying things like that. But, I just feel like I've seen a lot of games over a lot of years, right? And seen a lot of trends. I've seen made my own mistakes on, analyzing how those things go. But I feel like I have a pretty good grasp of how things happen and execute in the game space. So I think that's definitely one of my positives, right?
This is a terrible job interview.
I know. Well, this isn't a job interview. You try to be that publicly. I don't. That's not my style.
In the job interview, it's like, I'm the legend. Bow to me, Daddy. Here we go.
Oh God, Ben.
Okay. What about? How long have you been considering leaving? Let's say, here's a clean cut, like even before the layoffs happened, which were brutal for everybody, especially brutal for you. Before that, were you also considering about leaving Game Informer?
I think it's one of those things like anybody does anything for a long time. There'd been moments where I'd probably said to myself, like, should I be doing something else? Do you know what I mean? Like, I do think there was a point, and I've addressed this some of that, like, am I still good at what I do? Right? Am I, and like, because I have my own ideas and I've had my own ideas for 29 years, I would ask myself, quite frankly, like, am I helping Game Informer? Am I hurting Game Informer? I don't know. I mean, I think these are questions I ask myself from time to time, right? Like, am I still making things better? Am I still being successful at what I do? Right? Is there still room for me to do things right? So that was a question I'd ask myself from time to time. I don't think I was necessarily planning. I think at one point I always thought I would be a Game Informer until I never worked again. Mm-hmm. That I would be here until I retired was a thing that I thought for a long time. But probably in the last 2 or 3 years, I was like, it was odd to be like, hey, I run a magazine and I've been doing it for a long time. In the public space, like I feel like there should be, newer voices talking and addressing how games are doing and changing, right? And I was always very good at supporting them, but to some degree, Game Informer over time, especially when I took over the podcast, you know what I mean? Like I was the voice. I wasn't just helping people be successful or helping people learn how to find their voice or helping people do those things. I was kind of doing those things again. And I think, I'd like to see other people do it. I know what I think.
Yeah. Like that young buck, Andrew Reiner. Let's see what he has to say.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, Reiner's been around with me for a long time. And, I think that's a decision that Game Informer needed to make. And you know what I mean? Like, I think that's a great call. I think Reiner's a good choice to take over Game Informer.
Yeah. Did you don't have to divulge all the secrets. Did you have a good heart-to-heart one-on-one with Reiner? Did you give him any advice as you're leaving? Did you have a call with him to kind of walk through, or does he just know the lay of the land so he could pick it up on day one? You didn't need to sit him down and say, okay, this is where the keys are kept for this, and don't forget this part.
I certainly did some of that. You know what I mean? I care a lot about the success of Game Informer. I mean, I really want them to be successful. You know what I mean? So I tried to give Reiner whatever advice I thought, like that weird note, whatever they say, the outgoing president writes this note that they leave on the desk of the incoming, with just this, like, here's some words of wisdom. I definitely tried to do that and try to encourage him and anything that, like just the challenges that are out there for all media, right? And everything like that. And like, just like, hey, let me know what I can do to help, and kind of deal with those things because they're all very real.
Anything you can share? Anything specific that you gave him a heads up about?
No. I mean, I think Reiner knows what he's doing. I think he's got to be excited about his opportunity to not have to hear me and my version of what I think things are. Right? I'm sure he's thrilled.
Do you think it's like, it's gotta be bizarre stepping away and just looking at it, and a part of you has to be rooting for it to change drastically, and a part of you has to be rooting for it to be like, okay, it's staying roughly in my mold, so I think I was leading on a good course the entire time. Are you rooting for Game Informer to change things up in a drastic way? Is it a best case scenario if it almost becomes more unrecognizable as it moves on for you?
I think I have one way or the other. Do you know what I mean? Like I don't look at any change that he makes as an indictment of what I did, or an indictment of what we did as a group. Things are always changing right now, and so media has changed. I mean, that's the thing too. Like when you talk about earlier, your question, like have you thought about leaving before? The other thing is I've thought about is like media is so different, right? Like it's just different than it was 29 years ago, or 20 years ago, or 10 years ago. And even to some degree, you could argue even like 5 years ago, right? I mean, I think it's just changed a lot in the way that people talk about games, the way that people discuss games, the way that people look at reviews or don't look at reviews, and the way that the preview systems work. I mean, all these things have changed so much. And I think that is that kind of classic cliche, the only thing constant is change. And I think it's going to continue to change. And, I think it's hard. Like it's not just hard for like games media. It's hard for all media out there right now, right? Like, I think it's a tough media space. And so I think that comes into consideration. So I don't think what Reiner does or what the whole team does with the magazine or doesn't do reflects on that. You know what I mean? I did the best job I could. That's the way I look at it, right? You know what I mean? Like when you gave me the podcast, I did the best job I could.
You did a good job, man. I listened to every week. It was very fun. It was fun to watch you and listen to you get more and more comfortable over time. And I should point out, like I talked about it, God, I was on the Great Goaty Hunter somewhere, but a lot of that came from a community member, like Chris Cochin. He's the one who's like, I talked to him before I left Game Informer just to get his read on, what he thought about my plans for MinnMax overall. And his first question was like, well, who's taking over the Game Informer show? I'm like, who do you think should? He's like, oh, Andy. I was like, oh, of course, Andy. I don't know why I didn't think of that. So it's nice that, maybe the ball got rolling from this community member. And then I'm curious, just over the last 7 months hosting that podcast, what you learned. Did you learn anything new about the industry or the community? Do you think it's changed your perspective on things, just being at the helm of a gaming podcast, even for that short span there?
Yeah, I mean, it was a lot of fun. I mean, it was a bummer that it happened during COVID, not to bring that up again.
Oh,
but
sure.
I mean, that was the thing too, is like, I talked about, hey, some things I'd like to change about the show, but without a studio, I mean, for one of the things I quickly learned, I was like, man, this just makes doing, at least for me and all the other things I had to do, I was like, I really like having a chance to do a lot of interviews, I wanted to do them, but I was like, I don't have time to get these things in here. You know what I mean? And so like, some of the things that I dropped mostly because of COVID. I would have, I think there could have been some opportunities to do some things differently. At some point I was like, I spend so much time on the one show. Like, should I have been doing it every day? Should I not have been doing it every day? You know what I mean? Like how to explore all those kind of things on how to handle it. I thought about those things, but instead it was like, oh my gosh, the world's on fire. There's so much stuff to do. Just let's get it done.
Yeah, and it's Tuesday. We got to figure out what this show is right now. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So, I think what I learned the most was I didn't learn anything here, but it was fun to be able to just interact again with the readers.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, you talk about 25 years ago, I would have read all the letters that came in. I would have done letters to the editor, Dear GI. I would have done a bunch of all that stuff. And just over time, I got so many other jobs. The only interactions I had really was on Twitter. And people would send me emails too, like, they're great, which I always read everything you sent me and I'd check them out. But I wasn't spending extended time like reading and interacting with people outside of Twitter. And so it was great to just hear the community and read the community emails and know what their questions are and know what their thoughts were and what they were, that they're concerned about. I thought that was a lot of fun.
Yeah, diving into YouTube comments. They can be brutal.
I went in. I don't have a problem. I already make fun of myself, so I can go on YouTube and they're like, "That guy's an idiot." I'm like, "Yeah, that guy is an idiot." I don't know why.
Thumbs up to that comment, real quick. Yeah,
exactly. Why would you watch that show? I sure wouldn't. I think that was. I don't mind going and hearing that kind of analysis about what I was doing. I thought it was a lot of fun. So that was the good part about the podcast.
Yeah.
I'm not even joking. I was like, yeah, I'm going to kind of miss podcasting a little bit. Can I start my own podcast? I don't know. I got to ask my new bosses if I can do that. I don't know if I can do that or not. I don't know the answer to that. I think I would kind of love to do that. Again, maybe at some point, maybe that's outside of my, hey, I'm not in games journalism anymore. I don't know. I could do something just about just what I'm doing and what I'm hanging out doing. Maybe.
Yeah.
I don't know. Is there any money in podcasts? There's not any money in podcasts, is there?
I think there's a little bit. There's a tiny bit.
There's a little bit of money in it? I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. It's something I don't know. It was fun. I'm not against doing it again. If people want to listen to me, yap.
I think a lot of people do. I think you should do it. And I remember even a while ago pitching it would be awesome if you just had a podcast about biking. And I know of a certain podcast network that would love to have you, Andy, and take care of all the hosting fees and everything else.
Yeah, I think I did seriously think about this. I want to point this out. There was a point where I was like, could I make, a podcast or a business or out of cycling, gaming, and sneakers, which are the three things that I spend my most time on, right? And I was like, the cross section of people that are interested in those three things from this guy, by the way, it's not that those things don't have a high interest level. It would just be from me, my perspective on it. The only thing I really have any true expertise on is games. So I was like, I don't think so. But I think that's, those are the things that interest me. That's the stuff I spend my time on. Well, I don't really watch a lot of movies. I don't really watch a lot of TV. It's all about those kind of things for me.
You should lean into it. You do this frustrating thing. You did it on the podcast, and it made me want to throw my phone across the room when you're like, yeah, I've been streaming on Twitch. I would never give out the Twitch handle. I just kind of keep it private. And somebody said I had a good shot in Destiny the other day, so that made my day. I was like, why in the world are you streaming on Twitch and not letting the community watch you and interact with you? It's infuriating on this end of the fence.
I don't know. I just was kind of doing it to learn about it, to just understand it a bit more, and just to do it, and what it was like to do it and kind of experience it. So it was a learning moment for me more than anything.
But what's the harm just in saying, hey, I'm on Twitch right now, let's hang out?
I think I've pointed this out. It's just not the kind of the way I think. Do you know what I mean? I make the Conan O'Brien self-deprecation jokes. Sure. You know what I mean? That's what I do. That's the humor I've had for a long time. And I kind of feel like I know it annoys people, and it's funny too because I feel like a lot of a lot of people have just they really hate that as a joke system, like yourself, Ben. So it's always kind of funny. I'm like, I need to stop doing it, but I also I just have a hard time being like super positive about that kind of stuff. So, you know, I mean, like, I think there's better people to watch play games on Twitch than me. That's just my opinion.
Let the free market decide that then, Andy. Maybe you'll have 0 viewers, but it's just frustrating that there's a lot of people that want to watch you stream your games, and you're saying, I'm doing it. I'm just not going to tell you the URL. It's so frustrating. And I think you have this overall philosophy at times where you don't want to do anything unless it's perfect. You know, that would come up a couple times at Game Informer. We're like, let's do this thing. For the love of God, let's do this thing. And you're like, slow down. I can't do it until we're the best at it. It's like, well, then we're not going to do anything. It caused me to pull my hair out a couple times, but I think that probably applies to the Twitch stream of like, well, I'm not a very good streamer yet, so I don't want to lean into it.
I had some readers of the podcast send that into me that they were like, just even on the podcast, they were like, you would over control the podcast because you wanted everything to be right. And I was like, yep, you're probably right. You're probably right. That's definitely that's my thing.
Yeah.
You know, I think it's part of it is I want there to be perspective on everything. I mean, that's one of the things that I kind of gotten from doing this a long time is I always like perspective on just about everything I can do or talk about. And so I always felt like that was really important to everything we did. And so also at times in the podcast, I would be like, oh, we forgot about this. This is an important, like, these things need to be known, I think, to understand and have the best understanding of the topic at hand. And so I would start to make sure I would go through that list of things that I thought were like important to the topic that, you know, that help the listeners or the readers come up with their own decisions about what they were. I thought they were just important things to know. So I did that, Ben. There's no doubt.
No doubt. It's fine. I'm curious how you evolved throughout the years on micromanaging in general. I've seen and heard tale of both ends of the spectrum about you as a manager at Game Informer getting so focused on tiny details and getting too ingrained, and then also being like, okay, I'm going to step back and let folks handle it on their own. You want to talk about your evolution just as a boss throughout the years on that spectrum?
I mean, I think there was a time when you definitely try to overmanage as you learn how to manage people. You know what I mean? Like, are you ready for my TED Talk on managing?
Please, yes, that's what we're here for.
It's like, and then over time, you quickly learn that the best way to have the best team to execute the best way, you know, especially if you're like shorthanded or taking on difficult tasks, is that everyone has to row the boat, right? Like, for lack of a better term, not to sound like the Minnesota Gophers coach, but it's like I have to trust other people to do those things, right? And I have to trust people to make the best decision. I try to advise people on like those decisions. Like, hey, I think, you know, my experience shows that this could be bad, but if you really want to take a chance on that, I'll back you on that chance. You know, I think over time I learned that I could tell someone something was going to go wrong or poorly 50 times, and they'd keep going back and trying to do it. And eventually I'd be like, hey, you go do that. Go make your own mistake. You'll learn when it's your mistake. You know what I mean? Than my mistake that I'm trying to tell you about, right?
Yeah.
And so I think a lot of that changed over the years. That I just wanted to try to empower people to make them better. That was the thing that became really important to me as I did it for longer. You know, make them the best at what they do. I think is the best kind of leadership that you can have.
Did that come about because of some boiling points, or did it come about just with learning that, oh, some of the success we've had has been from areas that I didn't over control and it blossomed up in an interesting way?
Yeah, probably a mixture of both. I'm sure there's people that told me they were annoyed at me at times, and I tried to take it to heart. It's hard to, you know, hear things that you do right or wrong. But I also think I always try to self-reflect on that. Do you know what I mean? And, you know, I pointed this out a long, long time ago. This is old Game Informer kind of story. You know, that like when I started running the magazine and like we were like kind of churning through people, and I'd watch other people out there in the space. But this is a much smaller media space. I want people to understand it. Like, you know, I used to go to events and there would be like 10 people there, and they were 10 people and all I knew. And then, you know, somewhere along the way, like I think I went to a Call of Duty event once, and I was like, there are like 500 people here. This is insane, right?
Yeah.
I can't believe there's this much press. as events became more global and everything like that, it just totally changed versus the old days where it was like, hey, the person from IGN, the person from GameSpot, the person from EGM, you know, I mean, it was just like that was kind of that was the media, you know, crew. Was that there was definitely some turnover, and I was like, man, it's a bummer because I think these people are all really smart and they know a lot about games, and that stinks that they can't be, you know, a reviewer or something like that for life. So it slowly became really important for me, and that's one of the reasons we stayed in Minnesota, was that I wanted people to be able to make a job out of being a game journalist, which at the time wasn't that terribly easy, right? And so that was really important. And so I tried to push that, and then eventually I kind of learned with that same mindset that, like, if I want it to be their job for their lives, then I need to help, you know, make their lives better, and like the way that they do it, and that they want to keep doing it, right? I mean, that's the other thing too. If I want people to stay, if I want to have employees like I did, like Kato, you know, that worked there for 20 years, right? You know, I mean, things like that. Like they weren't going to stay for 20 years unless, you know, I trusted them and gave them opportunity to grow in the way they wanted to grow and to do things. So again, this is an interesting from my basement TED talk on leadership, but that was definitely, like, I think that was important that I had to learn over time if I wanted those people to keep coming and working for me, which I wanted them to, that I encouraged them, and that I think just came with time.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned Kato. It still blows my mind. I don't know what I expected. Fireworks, I guess there were fireworks last week. But like, it's so crazy that somebody like Kato can leave the game industry after 20 years. And it's like, a couple people mentioned it on the Resetera forum. And not that we need to hold a parade for a Kato, but it's just amazing that Game Informer is a place where somebody can work there for 20 years. And it's like, it's a cute little short run you had there. You almost made it the full thing. Like, everybody's been there for so long. It's mind-boggling.
Yeah, it really is. And it was one of those things too. You kind of be like, oh, you haven't been here that long. And they'd be like, I've been here 10 years, Andy. And you're like, oops.
I know. I won't say who.
Bad.
I won't say who, but when I announced I was leaving Game Informer, I was like, yeah, I'm leaving. And they're like, oh, how long has it been? I was like, 9 years. They're like, you didn't quite hit 10, huh? I was like, all right, well, I think 9 years is an awful long time. I think I've done everything I could possibly do here, but apparently not.
Yeah. So, you know, I think that just came with time. That just came with, doing it for a while. Watching, learning, hoping.
Yeah. This is going to sound like it's leading into an area that's more personal than it is, so please don't panic. But I was talking to your wife last year, and she had an interesting bit of insight where she was talking about how much you've grown as a person over like the last 10 years, 10, 15 years. She's like, he's really changed and gotten a lot better and a lot healthier mentally and physically. And I'm wondering, do you recognize that in yourself? Do you want to talk about how you think you've changed just within the last 15 years overall?
Yeah, I mean, the big change for me was when my brother needed a kidney.
Right.
You know, that was a big thing for me, and it was like a kind of a gut check on how I lived my life and what I did, and you know, everything like that. So I changed my life. That's when I found cycling. Cycling for me was the big thing. I mean, cycling was literally changed so much of my life. You know, I like the Tour de France now. I miss the Tour de France. The Tour de France should be going on right now. And by the way, I'm probably the only person that cares. There's like 5 people who follow me on Twitter who also like bikes, and I really enjoy them. But you know, like I like those things became more interesting to me, I guess. And I certainly changed the way I tried to behave, I guess, a little bit.
Is it connected to you had to get healthier in order to donate a kidney, or how are those related in your mind?
Well, my brother sent me, you know, called me. He was like, hey, I hate to ask, but I need a kidney. You know what I mean? I was like, hey, you know, sure, man. I know whatever you need. And then I was like, I just kind of started biking. I think it's okay. And I could barely kind of just bike around the lakes around here. But I was like, if I'm going to give him the kidney, I'm going to give him the best kidney I can give him. Right. So like, I just started like focusing more on like working out and getting better. That was just like a really, like, I was like, before I go into this surgery, I'm going to be like in tip top shape. Right. And like try to do the best I can to make sure that it makes the surgery go better, you know, for me, but it wasn't certainly selfish. It was like, you know, I want to have the best organ that I can donate available. And honestly, one of the things I found with cycling, which welcome to my TED talk on cycling.
Take it away, man.
Is that I love cycling that I never knew, because when you get out on the road, you get to think. It kind of shuts everything off. I mean, you're busy, so it kind of calms my mind. I have a little bit of OCD and a fair amount of anxiety at most times that I'm doing something wrong. But when you're out there kind of riding the bike, those kind of go away. And like, I think I find solutions come to me, I guess, in that kind of situation.
It's like a shower.
I think they've called it they've called like a runner's high or anything like that all along the way. So I feel like when I ride a bike, it's very zen for me, and that was part of that for me. So I found that very helpful.
Do you have any tips for people getting into biking? I'm sure you got a lot, but is it just, hey, find a good trail and get a good bike and get out there?
I mean, it's like anything. Do it because you think it's fun, right? You know what I mean? Like, first of all, don't like. Some people are like, this is torturous, right? The seat is uncomfortable, you know. And there's the real thing is that you have soft tissue on your butt, and every year, like if I quit biking, you have to go out and like toughen up again, and it takes a month. And so there's like a month of riding your bike that's not fun, you know. That's like, I can't sit down afterwards. Why would I do this hobby? This hobby is stupid. But when you get past that, that's when it starts to be fun. And for me, it was all about, I liked exploring with cycling. You know what I mean? It was like when I would get on a bike and I could go out and I could go see things, start to understand cities. Like I'd go ride bikes in other cities, ride bikes. I know more about Minneapolis since I started riding a bike in it than I lived here for 20 years. And over the last 10, I've learned more about Minnesota as a place and just seeing its own kind of wonders or whatever because of a bike. And so like, that's why it's like, I enjoy it, you know? So if you want to see more of your city and you want to explore, like you can run, but I can bike a lot further than I can run.
Yeah.
Right. And you can go for a hike, but I can bike a lot further than you can hike. So I just like it because it covers a lot of ground.
Do you think that outside of like, you know, the meditative state and, you know, runner's high, kind of clearing your thoughts, do you think like getting healthy in the last 10 years or so has improved your mental health as well? Do you think it's had an impact on your thought patterns?
According to YouTube, no.
Really?
No,
oh, the comments. I see.
yeah, that's the joke. Yeah, I mean, maybe. I feel like, you're always just trying to reason through things. I don't know if cycling helped me with that. I'm not entirely sure. I just know that like, as far as like being a little bit more healthy, just made me more aware of my choices. I think, and what I ate, and what I did, and like maybe that, helped me be a little bit more responsible.
Yeah,
certainly. I think I started to understand a little bit more the connections of like what my decisions led to, right? And that's just in general, like looking down the path. Where I think when I was younger, I'd be like, whatever, I'm gonna live forever. Kind of thing, and just kind of ignoring the consequences of most things. And you just kind of, I think as you get older, you quickly learn that everything has at least some little bit of consequence that you need to think about.
Right. Yeah. I've been amazed by your passion for games throughout the years, but then also just passion for arguing about games. Like, it's amazing.
I do. I love it.
Like 25 years into your run, you are going to the mat over a top 50 list to the point of by far being the pissiest person in that room about this list. Like, it was do you ever, just on your drive home, did you have moments of, well, I can relax a little bit. I don't need to flail like a maniac in this meeting here.
Yeah, I think I like those meetings. Maybe I didn't ever want to like just force my agenda, right? But I mean, we had lots of stalemates, and we had a stalemate. I would try to make a call and get us done and take the heat. I always felt like part of my job as editor-in-chief was like, when no one liked the decision, then I would make it so everyone would dislike me instead of dislike each other, right? Like that's just how it's going to be.
Skyrim is the greatest RPG of all time, people. Check out the list.
Yeah, there's people that don't like that answer. There's people that do like that answer, right, by the way. And I still stand by my decision in that, and I still think it is. But it's all perspective, right? And so try to give as much as I can as far as that perspective, try to listen to everybody else's perspective as much as I can. But yeah, lists are going to be an argument. That's just it. Period.
That's it.
Wait, let me tell you. Okay, so now that you're at MinnMax, you don't have any arguments. You don't ever argue about games there. You just everyone just like
it's all chill. Not to be a dick. We did have a moment where we aired like our debates for Game of the Year 2019, and there was a moment at the end of it where Jeff was like, wait, I don't feel terrible about any of this. I don't understand the idea of leaving a meeting and not just feeling this pit in my stomach like I've just been robbed. But
all right, well,
I think that's
also... I'm the worst person ever. I get it.
Hey, Jeff said it, man. I didn't say it. It's a smaller crew. It's easier over here, you know?
Yeah.
Looking back at Game Informer, do you have any big regrets? Things you would have liked to do, we didn't get to?
I mean, I think I have a ton of regrets. I mean, there was tons of stuff I wanted to do. There was, tons of things that I tried to promote to get done that I just never got done. Like not that I didn't work on them, right? I just couldn't sell them up the chain to be a successful, business model. And so they just never happened. So, I'm disappointed in that. I always thought the magazine was great. I wanted to do more, to expand what we could do, work with you, do more videos, do more everything. And, so that's now a job for the next group to figure out.
Yeah. To try and figure out that puzzle of how to get things up the chain.
Yeah. Well, or just how they're going to do it. You know what I mean? I think there's lots of solutions, right? You know what I mean? Like I chose the solutions that I chose and tried to get them through, and maybe I made some mistakes. I don't know.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You never know. You know what I mean? You can always look back and say, was that a good call? Was that a bad call? Well, I don't know.
Right.
Time will tell.
So I remember when we recorded the Game Informer History podcast, right afterwards, you were like, oh my God, maybe we can stitch something. And I felt so bad that I didn't talk about Kathy, the publisher that you worked with for 20 years.
Yeah.
Did you want to say anything about your evolution of relationship with her, or her importance to Game Informer throughout the years here, just to get that off your chest in a way we didn't before?
I mean, I just, Kathy cared about the people at Game Informer, and it was great to have a boss that cared about the people. Do you know what I mean? I think another reason that people stayed a long time is that we tried to care about the people that were at our work. I think that was important to her and to me, and I was glad that I had her support on like trying to do the best we could do. Right? Could any of us always done better? Could everyone made more money? Could everybody done, of course, right? Like, you know what I mean? Like, you only can work with what you have. But I do know that for her and for me, she cared a lot about all the people. And, for how much I love talking about games, it was just really important that, I cared a lot about the people at that place. And so, having an awesome video game job is great. Having a video game job where I can go work with great people who are supported in what they do is just as important.
Yeah. I know in the 500th episode of the Game Informer Show podcast, I think it was on air, maybe it was off air, I forget. But I was bugging you again about writing that book, about your history in the game industry. Have you thought more about the idea of writing the definitive Andy McNamara book?
I better hurry because I only have 4 more days off.
They're easy, man. Just crank it out.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I've thought about it. I mean, everyone always asks about it, and I think there's the kind of the stories I tell and the stories I don't. Yeah. I think if I ever wrote a book, it would be better if I told you the stories I don't tell.
We agree.
And I don't think those are stories I should tell while I'm trying to be employed in the video game industry. So I don't see it anytime soon. And if I wait, 10 years, maybe people still care. Maybe people, I think that's an interesting thing. People cared about my run at Game Informer for 29 years. Will they still care about what I did in video games over the next 10 years or 15 years? I don't know. Do you know what I mean? I think that's the interesting challenging for me is that I can't say this enough. Games matter a lot to me, and I think that was one of the things that people said to me when I left. And I loved that they got that. They were like, Andy, you cared a lot, and you're still really enthusiastic about games, and you still love talking about games and a long time. And I'm like, yeah, and I could do this forever, right? Like I can keep going. Like every day I wake up and I go downstairs and I play games. I play games at night until I can't play games anymore. You know what I mean? Like I really do appreciate and love games, and I hope that with the next chapter of my life that I can continue to make games and people that like games and people that make games and people that publish games and people that do anything around games, support games in any way, or just play games, that I can make their lives and gaming as an entertainment better, then that's awesome. That's definitely my goal going forward. That was my goal for the last 29 years. Yeah. So, we'll see. Maybe people will care about the book by the time I write it. Maybe they won't. But I'm probably not writing it soon. Okay,
what about this? What about, because writing a whole book seems impossible. Have you ever thought about doing like a big oral history where it's like a lot of Game Informer editors throughout the years and just put together something big and collective and just, I don't know, money can go to charity, something like that, just like a bigger project overall, so it's not just all on you?
I guess maybe. I feel like this next chapter of my life, which is so weird to say, by the way, talk about weird. When I had to apply for jobs, which I hadn't done since like forever, right? Yeah. The last job I applied for was Funko Land. I mean, literally, you know what I mean? Like, you got to think about that. And I was 19, right? And it was like one of those forms where you just put down like, name a teacher you like. Can we call your parents, right?
You know what I mean? Like currently high. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just like whatever. And then I had to do these, and people would they'd send me forms to apply at companies, and they would be like, list your last 3 jobs, and they'd be like, listed as like you had to put in 3 jobs, right? You know what I mean? Like you had to fill in those things to submit the form, and I was like, I don't have 3 jobs, right? You know what I mean? Like I have one. This is weird. So that was a challenge, to some degree, when it came to that, and they were like, I was like, can we talk to like your last, X number of bosses? And I'm like, my last boss, Kathy, I had for 20 years. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I don't have just another like direct report right here. So that was always kind of funny. But yeah, I feel like I've got a lot of work to do. I feel like I've got a lot of things to learn. I feel like I'm really excited about where I'm going. Like if I was working on the book, I would want to work on the book.
Yeah.
I'm not going to forget I'm not going to forget my tales from.
Just start to take some notes right now, just in case. Just a couple notes, just in case.
And so I don't see that. I think I'll maybe get to it at some point. We'll see.
Okay.
But I mean, I'm just excited to go do something new. I have so much to learn. I have so much to just go do.
Yeah.
And it's fun in that I was editor in chief, right? I mean, where was I going to go at Game Informer? You know what I mean? Like, as I go back out into the game space, like this is a new start. Like I get to go and learn and do things, and maybe I'm really good at it. And then I get to go hopefully I can continue to grow and do more stuff and help games. So I have a lot of ambition still, right? And so I'm excited to get out there and prove to a lot of people what I think I know, which you asked me earlier, and I only listed the one thing, but prove to people what I know, and hopefully, that they appreciate that, and that I can use that opportunity to go out there and, like I said, do more to help games and gamers.
Yeah, and you get to learn the city of LA on a bike, which is it a great biking town? It can't be good.
No, I mean, there's parts I was telling some of my friends, I was like, hey, I think I'm going to bike commute to work, and they were like, we want you to not be dead. And then they literally asked some of their friends in LA, and my friend says, if you try to do that as a commute on a bike, you will die. So, given on where I live, there's definitely some things that you can't do on a bike. I have ridden my bike throughout LA before.
Yeah.
There's definitely parts that you're like, I remember when I was staying there for a while, I was like, I don't know if riding my bike down La Cienega was a good idea. And I did it multiple times. And I look back and go, maybe that there were other options.
Right.
But that said, I do think it's a good biking town in that one of my favorite rides ever was Mount Baldy, which is right there. The San Antonio Mountains are right up there. Big Bear. You've got the whole, the valley is surrounded, Topanga Canyon. There's just tons of places to go ride.
So it'll be good for day trips, just not the daily commute type of thing.
Just not the daily commute type thing. I'm hoping that I get to stay in a part of town where I can just come home and hop on my bike like I do now. I mean, that's one of the great things about Minneapolis is the trail system here. I can come home and I'm on a trail in 1 minute. The second I leave my garage and on my bike, I'm on a trail and can start going, and it's generally safe. But yeah, we'll see. I mean, I might have to drive to go do some biking somewhere, but the weather's going to be better year round.
You got that. You're going to miss
There's
it, man.
that.
You're going to miss the snow. You're going to miss the fun, like the first nice day in the spring. Nothing better. Just the best vibe throughout all of Minnesota and the north here.
It is. I would agree. I mean, I love Minnesota. I would have stayed, but like, I think for me, LA is the most important video game city in the United States for game development. Because I think publishing is San Francisco, like no doubt, but it kind of in my mind, I feel like that's where the action is. Now in America, I think it's probably Montreal. So you know what I mean? This is like my own personal take. You know, Montreal is obviously a huge development city.
Yeah.
But I just want to get out there and get a chance to see some new things and like experience some new things. And so I think being there matters for that, right? So I'm ready to make those sacrifices to do what I said. Like I've got ambition here.
It's super exciting to see. I can't wait to see what you do next. And I hope that you're going to be the lead designer for the new Pokemon Snap. That's going to be my guess about where you're going. I
mean, you know, I think, you know, I've never designed a game. To think that I'm going to go design games, or that anyone would trust me to design a game right now, I would question their decision making if they let me go design a game.
Okay, all right. But if you had to design new Pokemon Snap, Andy, what would be the number one bullet point on that list?
You're just bringing this up because you know I don't like Pokemon Snap,
which is insane.
And you want to talk about how you like Pokemon Snap. I got it. I understand what's going on here.
Okay, not going to play the game.
Yeah, I just, you know, I would not make that game. But that's me.
All right. Teach their own. And you know what? I'm sure it'll come out and be a solid 725. And, you know, who can say who's right? Up in the air.
Who can say?
Who can say? Andy, congratulations on launching the next phase of your career. And I speak on behalf of everybody and all the YouTube comments below this, thanking you, sir. Thanking you for a job well done for 29 years.
Thanks. Yeah, thanks. And thanks to everybody who's watched and read and been a part of Game Informer all along the way, yourself included. You know, I can't thank everybody enough.
That's really sweet. And I guess, yeah, thank you for my large section of my social life and my career, and just about everything in my life all traces back to you taking a shot on me, you know, you and Reiner. So I really appreciate that too, man.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, I mean, like, you know, you deserve all the success, and you know, I'm you earned it. I mean, maybe I opened the door, but you went through it.
That's fair. You
gotta remember that. You gotta remember that.
Cool. All right. Thanks so much, Andy. Appreciate it, man.
Yeah. All right. Cheers. Bye.
MinnMax is a Patreon about games, friends, and getting better. The deepest dive is the best, most thorough discussions about games on the internet. Prove us wrong, please. The MinnMax Show podcast airs every Thursday. Patreon supporters vote on what we stream every single week, and a whole lot more. Give us a shot, try subscribing to the YouTube channel, and we hope we can win you over.